The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie! We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody!
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in! We're gonna start right here!
And we are going to start right here. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Sugar. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast triple feature. And joining me tonight, her name is Shaylona Tate, and she is a massive deal.
I am a massive deal.
You are a massive deal. How's it going?
It is going pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Could I complain about stuff? Oh, God, yes. Am I going to? Nah.
We're here to talk about movies.
And musicals.
Yeah.
Mostly musicals. It's been a while since I've done something like this. A couple years back, I had Melissa's friend Elizabeth on. She was a musical theater major in college. She was an instructor at a local musical theater studio that also did dance. And so she had been watching my podcast, mostly for like the Marvel movie reviews and stuff. And she was like, "Oh, can I come on your podcast one day? I want to talk to you about these Marvel movies." And I was like, "Absolutely not." However, I will bring you on for something I think you'd be useful for. And that was to talk musicals. So at the time, this being the year of our Lord 2021, I think it was, at the end of it, we did There's Something About Jamie, Click, Click, Boom, starring Andrew Garfield, and Diana the Musical. So we've done stuff like this before. Obviously we did Wicked. We did The Wiz. That's what got this iteration started. Was I had to come on. You like I'm coming like a year and a half ago. I'm coming on for The Wiz, all right. And you are loaded for bear. So I said, if she's really got a passion for musicals, I like talking musicals, and it's something we don't do very often on here. So I brought you back to talk musicals, Shay.
Yeah. And I am so happy to be back and so happy to be talking about musicals.
Had you seen tonight? We're talking Mean Girls, the musical, the movie of the musical of the movie, from 2024, about a little over a year ago, 2024. Waitress the Musical, which is a movie that was a recording of a stage production from back in, I believe it was 2023, and there's a whole history there. And then another recording of a stage production that MTV put on for Legally Blonde the Musical. Now, had you seen any of these before we decided to do this show tonight?
So I had seen the Mean Girls movie. I have listened to the soundtrack for Waitress, and I was kind of just aware of Legally Blonde.
Okay.
These kind of girly movies aren't really in my wheelhouse.
Right.
A lot more of what I usually do is like wacky comedies and horror and things like that.
Give me like your top three, and if you can't rank them because ranking is hard, what are just three? If I were to say pick three, which three would you want to talk about? Which musicals?
Probably Bat Boy, the musical, which I don't think we can find a recording of.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It is absolutely hilarious. It is a musical that a theater major created based off of the Weekly World News cryptid Bat Boy.
At Bat Boy. Okay, got it.
Then probably Sweeney Todd and
Okay.
Les Mis.
Now we're talking. I love Les Mis. I saw Les Mis on Broadway in New York City. It is to date the champion musical for me. It is my favorite musical. Has not been unseated by many contenders. I've seen plenty. Of musicals on stage and just plays and stuff. I think the last couple were actually I saw Mean Girls. Come to think of it, the musical. I only just watched the movie of the musical for this podcast, and it was so it was this past weekend. So I didn't watch it last year. It is on a number of people's worst lists, however. So when I was going through that phase of last year, trying to figure out what my worst of the movies were, Mean Girls came up once or twice. So we'll have to. But I still hadn't watched it until now. But I also saw the movie when it came out with Lindsay Lohan. It's fun. I enjoy it. I think it's one of her better movies.
Oh yeah.
But going back to the musicals that I've seen, I may have talked about this before. When I lived in New York, and it was a little bit easier for me to hop a train and go into downtown Manhattan, I got to see Jekyll and Hyde, Les Mis, A Christmas Carol, Rent.
525,600 minutes.
Yeah, my daughter was singing that at one point for her musical theater group. So there was a lot of her singing that song. The one that I am more prone to singing just for no good reason is I run around asking people if they'll light my candle. Would you light my candle? Get away from me, you weirdo. I don't. I've never seen any iteration of the Phantom of the Opera. That one got past me. I did see Cats, however. I got to see Cats
cool.
at the Winter Garden Theater, and where they come out and they give you a lap dance. It's fantastic. You ever had a lap dance by a human in a cat leotard, Shay? It's fantastic. I highly recommend it.
That sounds like a hell of an experience. Honestly, I would love to go see Cats at some point. I've never actually been to New York.
Oh,
so.
You got to go, and you got to at least see one musical. Now they've made a musical of every single movie on the planet, which I have to tell you, as a sort of a way of getting into these movies tonight, I just want to bat this around with you and get your opinion on it. I'm kind of turned around on the subject, but I definitely came from a place of why do we have to keep making musicals out of movies? This seems silly. And I was starting to say here in Tampa is where I saw Spam a lot. And and I think I don't remember. I may have seen the Book of Mormon. I don't remember anymore. But so many movies and TV shows and things, they turn into musicals. Spider-Man the musical, Rocky the musical, and I'm just like, why? Why would you take these movies that were never meant to be musicals? Like literally all three of these movies, ones that we're going to talk about tonight, they all started off as movies. And some of them may have even started off as books before that.
Yeah, and I think some of that is a little bit more of. I don't think they need to exist, but I think they spawn out of a natural tendency for theater people. Because theater people, especially theater people who like doing musicals, constantly sing. Like if you went to the Playhouse, you would be hearing "Sewing the Musical" or "I'm Doing the Dishes," the opera.
Gotcha. So just they are singing the items of life is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So,
and I think a lot of that just people get an idea in their head, decide to write it down, and I think the fact that so many of these exist in more than just off-Broadway terms is more of an issue with producers than it is anything else.
The more I thought about it, because again, I'm not like religiously committed to this idea, and I did, like I said, I did get turned around on it because I started off from a place of this seems silly. Can we? Is there not a new idea on Broadway, for God's sakes? And now I sound like my ex-father-in-law. Is there not a new idea in Hollywood? But when I thought about it, number one, I really enjoyed all three of these, and we'll talk about them to one degree or another. And coming away from this experience of watching all three of these back to back was seeing how if you've got a good songwriter, you've got a good book writer, it doesn't really matter that it started off as a movie. As long as you've got, a dozen or so good song and dance numbers, there's no reason for it not to be a musical. And in addition to which, what I came to realize was they wouldn't do these if people didn't go see them. But they do. Clearly they have an audience. And they fall into kind of the same trap, I guess would be the word, as movies, which is people go to see recognizable IP. Mean Girls is recognizable. So if you've got, a multi-million-dollar theatrical production that you're putting on Broadway, you're going to want to do a safe bet of something people have seen in some iteration before and was already popular.
Oh yeah, and honestly, it kind of makes more sense to capture that tourist crowd, because you get people that are going to New York for the first time. Oh, we have to go see a musical, regardless of whether or not they're musical theater fans, because musical theater fans are going to go see the new one that everyone is talking about, like regardless of what IP it is. But the tourists that aren't musical theater fans, they know New York, Broadway, musical theater. They're going to walk down the strip and they're going to pick the first thing that they recognize.
Sure. If you've never been to New York, as you said, but if you do, when you get to that area of Broadway, like actual Broadway, there's just like, I remember, and I've told the story before, I remember going to a Slayer concert, and we were beset on all sides. It was like an invasion. It was the most surreal thing I've ever been a part of. Parrot heads to the left of me, parrot heads to the right of me. They were all around me. Do you know what a parrot head is, Shay?
I'm guessing it's Jimmy Buffett fans?
That is correct. Jimmy Buffett was in New York City, and he had attracted every white man and his wife from the Triborough area, from like a 300-mile radius. And they all came into New York City. And so, you've just got all of these guys decked out in leather and corpse paint and, metal T-shirts next to all these parrot heads. And, and we were all headed to the...
That sounds like Family Pictures when I was 13.
I'm sure. And we were all headed to the same part of Midtown Manhattan, which once you get to Midtown Manhattan, it's all bright lights and Broadway. You can't, at the time that I was there, it was very apparent like what the big musicals were. They were right in your face. Like if you're just, as you put it, you're just a passerby and you're like, let's go see whatever the new musical is. Just walk right into Midtown Manhattan. You'll see it. It'll be right there in your face. When it was Rent was everywhere. When it was Wicked, right before I left New York, thank God. That's not related to Wicked. That's related to how bad New York had gotten. But like Wicked was, you couldn't get away from Wicked. It was everywhere. Yeah. And then even stuff that had been there forever, something like 1 billion productions of Cats at the Winter Garden Theater. Why do I keep saying the Winter Garden Theater? It's fucking etched in my mind, man. I remember being a kid and seeing commercials and just, furries and leotards jumping out of Heather and Yon, and they're like, now see it forever. Memories, Cats at the Winter Garden Theater. I'm like, stop it. I just want to watch He-Man. So that was how I grew up. So let's get into Mean Girls, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Mean Girls is a 2024 American teen musical comedy film directed by Samantha Jayne and Arturo Perez Jr. from a screenplay written by Tina Fey. It is based on the stage musical of the same name, which in turn was based on the 2004 film, both also written by Tina Fey. It itself was inspired, it's just like a Russian doll, by Rosalind Wiseman's 2002 book, Queen Bees and Wannabes. It stars Angourie Rice, Reneé Rapp, Auliʻi Cravalho and Christopher Briney. Tina Fey and Tim Meadows, who's hilarious in this, reprised their roles from the original film. It premiered at the AMC Lincoln Square in New York City on January 8th, 2024. It was released by Paramount January 12th. The film grossed over 104 million worldwide and a $36 million budget and received mixed reviews. So, modestly profitable. Given the struggles that Disney is going through these days, I would imagine they would have loved to have gotten Mean Girls numbers. You know what I mean? So tell me what your thoughts are, real quick, of the original Mean Girls movie.
So I actually did not really like the original Mean Girls movie. The original Mean Girls movie came out when I was, I want to say 14 or 15.
Okay.
And first of all, at that point in time, I was an uppity bitch who did not like anything other than classics made before the year 1900.
You are a snob, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I was not a fun person to be around. But also even going back and watching it a few years later, it just, I understand that it is a good movie and that the comedic timing and the way the characters gelled together was absolutely perfect. It reminds me too much of my high school experience and it stresses me out.
It kind of has, and you've probably never seen it, but it kind of has like almost the Karate Kid structure to it. Where you have a new girl in town who is trying to find her way about town, but is making mistakes and making enemies of people. But the one difference is, if you go back and look at the Karate Kid, and this was brought up actually in Cobra Kai, Johnny gets Daniel as much as Daniel gets Johnny, to the point where, if somebody doesn't intervene, they're going to kill each other, which is exactly what happens. And that's why we get to the tournament at the end. It was, if this doesn't stop, this is going to end in death. Mean Girls, kind of the same thing. You have them doing stuff to Lindsay Lohan's character, and Lindsay Lohan's character doing stuff back to Regina, which causes her to do the burn book thing, which then causes the school to, riot and go downhill from there.
It's very much that mutual retaliation that is not going to stop.
Yeah, it's mutually assured destruction is what it is.
Yeah.
I liked Mean Girls when I first saw it. I was much older, I think when the original Mean Girls came out, I don't remember what year this was. I guess 2004. Yeah, by 2004, I'm almost ready to move to Florida. I'm done with grad school by the time this happens. But I also, I went to high school. There were cliques. This was not a foreign world to me. And I remember liking it. The basic premise, I don't need to do an entire plot synopsis, but Mean Girls is the musical is the exact same plot structure and synopsis as the movie. Homeschooled girl from Africa moves to town. She befriends some of the artsy losers of the school, who then in turn shove her in the way of the plastics, the hot girls. And she befriends them, but she's a double agent. She's reporting back to her friends all the tea, as they say. She's screwing with Regina. She's giving her like protein bars, which are making her get heavier, stuff like that. She likes Regina's ex-boyfriend. This is a problem. So eventually, this all kind of explodes. As I mentioned before, there's a burn book. The burn book has intimate details of other girls. This gets shared with the entire school. This causes huge problems. All the girls are trying to kill each other. By the end of it, Lindsay Lohan's character, Katie, has fucked up so badly, or I guess in this case, it would be Angourie Rice. Angourie Rice is now fucked up so badly that she has to start making amends with people. So she does the Mathletes competition. There's a couple of other things she does that resolves it. In the end, at one point, Regina gets hit by a bus. That resolves a couple of the conflicts all by itself. Everybody kind of learns, by the end of Mean Girls, the musical, everyone knows each other just a little bit better. and the conflicts are resolved, and they all live happily ever after. So, what did you think of this iteration of Mean Girls?
I actually really loved this iteration of Mean Girls. The sets were fantastic. The costuming was amazing. It has a full theatrical production value. There was definitely a lot of care put into this. And honestly, I feel like it trimmed out some of the fatty bits that I didn't particularly like in the original movie.
I don't remember the original movie well enough. That's why I did that kind of slipshod plot synopsis. So if you can remember what fat got cut, that'd be great.
So there were some of the throwaway jokes, and there were some character building things that just, they were technically very funny, but they didn't land with me particularly well. Especially the ones with Regina's mother.
That's what I thought you were going to say, because I remember there being a lot more of Regina's mom in the movie, and there isn't as much of her in this. They seem to have cut her down a bit.
Yeah, it's in the original movie, Regina's mom made me uncomfortable and want to take a shower.
Sure.
I think that was the point of her character, but
yeah,
it just didn't really serve the story very well.
It definitely in the movie feels like one of those gags the writers were too in love with. And the woman doing the performance gives really good performance. So, like, you don't want to, sometimes, I talked about this with You're Cordially Invited. Sometimes you just don't want to cut the really funny stuff. So you leave it in because, this is supposed to be a comedy after all.
Yeah. And honestly, it seemed, that particular bit seemed a lot more like it should have been an SNL skit rather than something that was in a full-blown movie.
I really like the musical numbers in this. My one kind of I have to tell you. Can I just talk to you for a minute? Can I talk to you, Shay?
Yeah, totally.
This movie made me uncomfortable as an almost 50-year-old man. Because, and I can't believe I'm going to be the one that says this, and if Robert were here right now, he'd almost die, I tell you, because it's me saying this. But as an almost 50-year-old man, these are supposed to be high school girls. Younger than 18, not women. And they are doing some very sexual things in this movie. When they do the Meet the Plastic song, that one especially, I think, is the most egregious example of this. That is a very sexual song, the way they are performing it. When the girl that plays Regina George, is why I did the line with you, because it stuck with me. She goes, "I am Regina George, and I am a massive deal." Oh God, what's the next line? Fear me, love me, stand and stare at me, and these are real. Madam, you're a child. Don't do that.
Oh yeah, and honestly, and I think they were kind of going for uncomfortable, because so it was kind of uncomfortable for me too.
Really?
But in a slightly different way, because I remember girls being like that.
Sure.
Like, I remember a lot of the girls in my class trying to push forward their sexuality way faster than they should have been. And being in my 30s now, I look back on that and I'm like, we were doing that shit way too fast. Yeah. And this was in the early 2000s, and it was before social media, so it's even worse now.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to derail the podcast, but we could talk for an hour or two about TikTok and Instagram and the kind of shit some of these girls are doing.
Oh yeah.
It's funny. I'll be at lunch at work, and I'll just be scrolling through TikTok, and every time you get to one of those girls whose entire contribution to the art form is to jiggle to music, I have to run, skip past it really fast before anyone sees me on it, because it's this close to pornographic, and I'm at lunch at in the officer dining area, so I gotta make sure what I'm watching is above board. And again, I'm just on TikTok, but still, it's so overtly sexualized, and some of these girls can't be more than 18 years old, if not a lot younger. So I'm watching this. And and you also got to remember about that scene, there's a lot of cleavage in that scene. A lot of cleavage in that song. And again, if you're telling me these are supposed to be adolescent girls, these are teenage girls, I shouldn't be looking at stuff like this. And that's the thing, is like, if you're making this movie, it's an interesting thing, because on the one hand, you're not wrong. I was the one making your argument when Jesse and I talked about Mignons, Cuties, if you watched it on Netflix, where I said, if you're going to do a movie about overtly sexualized tweens doing sexy dancing, and how, far the culture has run off with itself, and that we need to dial some of this back, you kind of have to show the girls doing sexy dancing. I'm sorry, that there's no way around that. That's the story you're telling.
If you're making that point, you have to be willing to make good people uncomfortable.
Yeah, which, I don't know if you've heard the legend, but the debate about Cuties got very verbally violent among us Radulich and broadcasting people. The best thing about that was Jesse and I did a review of it where Jesse didn't watch the movie. He just questioned me. Yeah, he was like, "I will do this podcast with you, but I will ask you questions like this is a CNN interview, and I will not watch this." So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this, and I don't remember if the rest of the movie made me feel as uncomfortable as Meet the Plastics did. There is okay. I will say the other really standout one. I don't remember the name of the song, but when they're all acting like animals, and there's people sniffing each other's butts, and I had sort of a thought about that. I was like, could you imagine, like, you're a young actor and you're really trying to make your way in Hollywood, and you're so thrilled that your agent got you Mean Girls the Musical. You're like, hot damn, like Paramount major release, Mean Girls the Musical. Shit, this is my moment. Like, yeah, in this scene, you're a dog and you're sniffing another person's behind, like the way dogs do. And you're going, the fuck did I get here?
I mean, to be completely honest, with the theater people I've known, that was shit they were doing anyway. We're all weirdos. Dude, I did a production of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
That all of the like animal fair creatures and the goblins were played by kids that were like 10 to 15.
Yeah.
They were acting like animals and like running around and rooting through the trash because they were dressed as a raccoon.
They really went for it, huh?
They really went for it. They got very into character. That was some serious method acting those kids did.
Generally speaking, like I said, it's the one I like the least out of all three of these, but this doesn't mean I didn't like it. It's not as good as Waitress or Legally Blonde as far as I'm concerned. The lead gal, she's good, I guess, has a lot of earnest, definitely. She's not Lindsay Lohan. No one will ever be Lindsay Lohan. But it's something that I'm gonna talk about when we get to Legally Blonde, whereas it's hard to not see the original lead. So it was hard to me to look at her and think, oof, you're not Katie, you're not Lindsay Lohan. But at least the girl playing Elle in Legally Blonde got a little bit closer to where I was doing that less. Here, she doesn't have. She's got a good singing voice, but she doesn't have. And I don't mean to say this disparagingly, the looks or the charisma of that era's Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, and I think that's where this movie fails the most.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is in the casting and the cast chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Because with as weird as the jokes were and with as uncomfortable and anxious as it made me, that casting was perfect. Everyone gelled together perfectly. You could absolutely see these kids being in school together and having the exact interactions that they had in the movie together. And the casting in the original movie was absolutely perfect. But it is really difficult when you're doing a musical to get someone that can sing, that can dance, that can act, and do
them at the same time
deals with. Yeah,
and because that's the comment that we've been making about I don't want to talk too much about it. And I doubt you've seen it yet, but we talked about Rachel Zegler in Snow White. I don't have the hate hard on that a lot of people do for Rachel Zegler. She, she made some very dumb mistakes, but she did not offend me personally. So I don't quite, I'm not quite trying to torch this woman and everything she touches the way a lot of other people are. But I am an honest critic, and I watched her in Snow White, and I said, the girl can sing, she's pretty, I think she can act. Boy, she can't do all of those things at the same time. And this is the same thing about Cynthia Erivo. I've said it repeatedly that I think if you need someone to belt out those songs in Wicked, you found the right gal. And I think she had good chemistry with Ariana Grande. But when you asked her to sing and dance and act at the same time, she failed. She couldn't do it. She couldn't keep all the balls in the air. But the opposite of that, speaking of Wicked, was Ariana Grande. She is a masterclass in being able to act and sing at the same time.
And I am gonna admit a very horrible thing. I have not seen Wicked yet.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the opportunity because the projector was broken when I went down to see it,
right.
And I've been waiting for it to come out on Peacock. I think it just came out on Peacock.
Yes, you are correct. It is on Peacock now.
Yeah, but yeah, and Ariana Grande has had a long history of doing all three of those. She was a star on Disney, then she did her own music career, and I think she's acted in a few things since getting off of the Disney Channel, which makes sense because TV acting and theatrical acting are very different types of acting.
Yep, and TV acting, theatrical acting is very different than motion picture acting. It's weird because you would think acting is acting, but as you're indicating, what you need to do to show performance on stage is not what you need to do it on television. In fact, on television, it's fucking jarring, and in movies, it's almost to the level of like porn or student film if you try that. Which is an interesting thing because it's will be the last thing I say about Mean Girls, the musical. Trying to find the right pitch to do the stage performance, musical singing and dancing for something that is in its bones still a movie. I mean, this was not, this was the movie version of the musical. That's why I keep making the Russian doll comments. And so, like, it is a fine point to figure out where the needle needs to be to get exactly the right pitch performance for that sort of thing. And you don't have that kind of hang up with something like Pitch Perfect, which is also a lot of singing and dancing, but it's a movie first before anything else.
Yeah. And in that case, a lot of the time with something that is a movie first, they'll find the right actors, and if they dead ass need to, ADR over the top of their singing voice. Right.
Overall, I think Mean Girls is passable. Like I said, I was entertained by it. I didn't all the way love it. It just, I remember watching the original Mean Girls musical, and I think I went just to be a supportive, at the time, husband and son, because my parents went. They paid for us all to go. I think we dragged my daughter to this, too, so I was going to be part of the family. But I was skeptical, Shay, that they could, pull this off. And I remember because stage production tends to be such a 4-dimensional, in-your-face kind of a thing, that it won me over by the sheer magnitude of its presence. That magnitude is not present in the film version.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the stage play yet, but I can see how it would have that absolute magnitude in the real stage play, because when you're transferring something into TV, you have to take those huge grand sets and condense them down, because otherwise you're not going to be able to see what's going on.
The last distinction that I'll make, and we're going to talk about this in about a month or so, because I'm going to have you back to do more musicals.
Yeah.
Little Shop of Horrors with Rick Moranis and Steve Martin. I think did a really good job of translating the stage musical aesthetic to the film, and I think it works. I think that's my biggest criticism of Mean Girls is this just feels like a movie where everyone's singing and dancing. It doesn't feel like they translated the performance as well as they could have.
Yeah, I think and I think some of why the Rick Moranis Little Shop of Horrors worked so well is because the original stage play does have a very heavy fantasy element to it.
Mhm.
It's a lot like what I said for The Wiz. It's bright, it's colorful. A lot of the time, the painters for the sets for Little Shop of Horrors will use expressionist techniques.
Mhm.
It's not supposed to look It's not supposed to look like an actual borough in New York. It's supposed to look like Skid Row.
Right, almost like another worldly vibe.
Yeah. And this one, I feel like they definitely could have done a little more to make it more like this is a high school in High Schoolandia.
Yeah,
Or something like that.
High School in the Clouds.
Yeah.
All right, if you got nothing else on Mean Girls, let's move on to Waitress the Musical.
Yeah.
Which I literally saw because I don't remember which came first. If I talked to you about bringing you back, because I enjoyed your conversation contribution so much from The Wiz, that I was like, I gotta have Shay on. You know, I don't get to talk musicals with people. You see who I hang out with, so when and I like when I have people on that are passionate about something, as opposed to when you're forced on at gunpoint by your boyfriend and told dance monkey, and you're like, the Meg was good. What do you want from me? Like, all right. So
it was a movie. It was not a me movie, but it was a movie.
So I don't remember if it was the conversation of say, hey, will you come back, that led me to Waitress, or if I saw an advertisement for Waitress in things I was looking up, because I'm always scanning, the upcoming motion pictures, what's on streaming, to find stuff to talk about. And I saw the poster, and the poster struck me because I'd forgotten that Waitress was an actual movie. So I didn't know Waitress had been a musical. I didn't know anything about this, but Max heavily advertised this. This poster in places that I look for things was everywhere. And so I was just like, hey, I want you to come on because I want to talk about Waitress, and we'll do these other, and I think you suggested Legally Blonde. I was like, well, this will give me an opportunity to watch Mean Girls. But yeah, that's how I came to Waitress. I may have seen the movie with Kerry Russell once upon a time. Maybe. I don't remember it well enough to say for sure I did or I didn't. I remember once I saw the poster for it when I was doing the research, I was like, oh, this does look vaguely familiar. But I like the poster for this one. This one's fun looking. You can see it there in the background. Before I read the wiki, what do you know of Waitress?
So I am actually still a very avid follower of new musicals and Broadway news and stuff like that. And I actually have a fairly funny story to tell you about discovery of this musical. So I had heard a ton of stuff about Waitress from like Broadway news and stuff like that. It had actually come out around the same time that Dear Evan Hansen had come out. Dear Evan Hansen, I believe, beat Waitress for the Tony that year, which I don't think it should have, because I have things to say about Dear Evan Hansen.
Okay. I saw that with my daughter on a daddy-daughter night. We'll have to bring you back on to talk about Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah, absolutely. But I loved the soundtrack. I have been listening to the soundtrack for a good long while. And this is where the story comes in. Dorian is a big fan of Sarah Bareilles.
Okay.
So we were hanging out and talking one day, and the She Used to Be Mine song came on, and I started singing along with it because I love this soundtrack. And Dorian was like, oh, I didn't know you knew who Sarah Bareilles was. And I was like, who? This is from the Waitress musical that came out a couple of years ago. And Dorian had no idea that Waitress was a musical. He was like, what? This is from Sarah Bareilles' album. So we both had a discovery there that that Sarah Bareilles is a musical artist and that Waitress exists.
Okay, that's fun. So, what is Waitress? As we've been intimating, Waitress is a 2023 American musical comedy drama film consisting of a live stage recording of Sarah Bareilles' and Jesse Nelson's 2015 musical based on the 2007 film by Adrian Shelley. The film was produced in the fall of 2021 during its limited run at the Ethel Barrymore Theater in New York City as part of the efforts to slowly reopen Broadway in the midst of the what do we call it? The unnamed something of unknown origin. With this being the first musical to begin performances near the end of the shutdown. The film features the cast of this remounting, which includes Barry Ellis, who also served as producer, Charity Angel Dawson, Caitlin Houlihan, Drew Gellig, Deacon Matthews, Eric Anderson, Joe Tippett, and Christopher Fitzgerald. Diane Paulus returned to direct the production, with Brett Sullivan directing the live filming and Nelson serving as the film's creative advisor. It premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival on June 12, 2023. It was theatrically released in the United States on December 7, 2020 by Bleecker Street in collaboration with Fathom Events. It received positive reviews from critics, and I think this just came to Max recently. It had a box office run, because, Fathom Events don't always do wonderful, of about 6 million. Let me tell you how every time they said sugar, I kept wanting to go, oh, honey, honey, do, you were my candy girl, and you got me watching you. But they didn't do that. I was like sugar, and then as I'm starting to go, huh, and it's like butter, and I'm like, oh, we're doing something else now. But the like I said, I may have seen the Kerry Russell movie. I may not have. I've definitely never seen this before. So this was a first watch last weekend. And the plot of it goes something like this. We have a waitress. She is married to somebody who treats her poorly, a narcissist, antisocial piece of shit. And he is manipulative and quasi-violent, and there is domestic violence happening in the home. She works at a diner. They seem to be specializing in pies, and pies are her love language. This is her art. This is how she expresses herself. And a lot of the way she interacts with characters is by, a specialized pie of some sort. Oh, I like you. You give me the vapors. Here's a pie made of passion fruit and vapors. Like, all right. So that kind of a thing. And that's like half of this musical. She wants to get away from her domestically abusing husband. So there's a pie making competition that she wants to raise money for. Enter. Turns out she finds out she's pregnant early on, and she wants to keep the baby because getting rid of the baby would be bad. But she doesn't necessarily want to raise this baby with her domestically abusing husband. So the plot is, she's going to enter this contest. She's going to win this contest because she makes a mean pie, and she'll take the money and she'll take the baby and she will make a run for it. And everyone around her who thinks this guy's a piece of shit is going, go, pie lady, go. So that's that. One of the waitresses that she's buddies with is having an affair with the cook of the diner, and part of that is because she has a crippled husband whom she takes care of, and she's cheating-ish. Because needs are not being met at home and everyone just wants to be happy. And then we have a mousy waitress who hasn't been on a date since the year of the flood, if ever. And she meets a man, and the man is just mired in historical knowledge and charisma and charm, and he's short and likes to dance. And they just fall madly in love. Mad, I tell you. As it goes on, she meets her doctor, her obstetrician, and he is also married, because this is going to become a theme of this musical. But they make eyes at each other, and because they're the two most attractive people in the musical, they fall in love. That's how that goes. So they begin a tawdry affair, And on the one hand, she's having an affair with him because she hates the guy at home, and he's having an affair with her because she's hot. When pressed on that, he also says, I don't always love my wife. All right. So we moved on to the third act. A lot of stuff that just happens, but doesn't necessarily move the plot forward. She eventually has the baby, at which point the husband had found out by this point that she was hiding money from him. Did not take it well. But she has the baby. She ends up breaking up with the doctor because he is married and the wife has moved into town and they should not continue to do tawdry things. And then she tells the husband at the time of the birthing of this child she doesn't want to be with him anymore, and he is exiled from the hospital. And that is about where this is left, if I remember correctly. She's with the baby. Everyone. Oh, they do like a post-birth scene where it's years later. I remember now. There had been an old codger who would come there, and he was very particular about his order. The tomato had to be on its own plate, don't you understand? Well, I guess it's his diner, and he died, and he left her the diner. So she rebrands it as Hot Lady Pie Place, and the kid kind of grows up in the diner, and all's well that ends well. I need a breath. What did you think of Waitress the Musical?
So I really loved Waitress the Musical. I love the music. I love the set dressings. The plot is heavy, but it's heavy in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those. It's beautiful and important, but I actually don't hate it.
That's good.
A lot of media like this, I end up really hating because a lot of them end up taking a very cynical, there is no bright side of anything kind of look. But in the end, things do end up working out, and her hard work does end up paying off, and she gets the happy ending that she wants, even if it's not the happy ending that she expected.
Yeah. I don't hate this musical. I actually really, really like it. It's one of those things where I want to like it because the craft quality is quite good. This was one of the things that reminded me that a Broadway musical could be like a gymnastics competition or a pro wrestling match. It's so goddamn physical.
Oh, yeah.
It's, the amount of blocking that has to take place in order for everyone to hit their marks at the speed they're doing things. It's like watching lucha libres wrestle, but less sloppy.
The set changes were like a fucking ballet on their own.
Yeah. Well, wrestling and dancing and musicals get compared to each other a lot because of the physical similarities between them. As silly as that might sound, watch as much wrestling as I do, and you watch as much musicals as I do, and you can't help but see the similarities when you have a deconstructionist mind. But you don't even have to for it to be that that apparent. You just have to be open to it. And here their dance moves, and it's not like the typical like Jennifer Lopez grind your hips kind of dancing. I mean, like, they are dancing, and it's funny. I never quite understood what movement was. Like, movement as a thing. Like, I'm going to my movement class. I went to school to learn movement. And it sounds hoity and ridiculous. Until I watch this and I go, that's what movement is. It is the ability to move with purpose without having to think about what it is you're doing to accentuate the song. It's quite good. And it's one of the best things about this. Why I can't hate it for the reasons I hate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And even backstage people have to learn about movement. I had to learn about movement, and most of what I did was dressing people backstage and taking care of props and stuff like that. But everybody has to learn about how to move inside of the theater, how to move around other people, because even the parts that you don't see are a dance.
Yeah.
When you've got that many pieces of set moving around.
I was going to say, and yeah, having to shift that much scenery from one scene to the next at the speed that they do things at, it's got to be a well-oiled machine, or someone's going to fucking fuck it up and get hurt.
Oh, yeah. Like, if one person is not in the place that they're supposed to be at the time that they're supposed to be, someone could break something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, if you were like, what's the best thing about Waitress? It's the movement. Songs are great, don't get me wrong. These are pretty people singing wonderful songs, and their movement is some of the best I've ever seen. That's what's great about Waitress. The plot kind of sucks. I don't know how much of this. I think I was reading about what the actual Waitress movie is, and I don't think it's quite as. It's not quite the treatise on domestic violence this one tended to be, which isn't the thing I dislike about it. You want to tell a story about the evils of domestic violence, by all means, I'm with you. How this handles it, I don't love. And more to the point, and this is going to sound funny, and this is not in any way to disparage particular relationship dynamics, because in particular relationship dynamics, the first and foremost thing you must have is trust and honesty. If you're going to do things in an open way, you have to be open. You have to be honest. Yeah, you have to be, these are things that have to be discussed outright.
Yeah.
Cheating is still cheating. Cheating is lying, and lying is bad. And what I don't like about Waitress, and I really do want to get your opinion on this. I'm not here to lecture you. This is not, like certain people do on this podcast, my opportunity to scream from the pulpit. But this is how I feel. So I'm entitled to my feelings, and then I'll get your opinion on it and tell me I'm full of shit. It's fine. But I don't particularly love the point of view of the musical that cheating is okay so long as you have a good reason for it. I don't think it's ever okay, because it's still lying. It's still being deceitful. And so you have this woman who's in a terrible marriage, which I get. It's not always easy to leave those terrible marriages, especially as manipulative as those people tend to be. I get all that. That's bad. She knowingly gets into a relationship with the doctor, whose only reason for cheating on his wife is, I'm not always into her. I'm like, you as a musical want me to cheer these people who are not doing the right thing. And then that's not enough for the musical. The musical has to fucking double down on it and go, well, look, even the waitress and the cook are doing it. And she's doing it because she's got a husband at home who can't, do anything for her physically, and that she has to care for, and she has needs that need to be met. And at no point do they say they have an open relationship. She just goes, it's fine. It's just fine. And the cook has a wife at home. And I think at some point someone even asks him about it. And she goes, and he's like, just kind of blows it off. It's like, it's fine. Okay. Nobody posits a legitimate reason for lying and being deceitful. And the reasons given are flimsy at best. I don't like the standpoint of view that the musical is coming from, because the musical is telling you this is all okay, and I just don't agree with that. That's the part of it that's why I struggle with this, because I want to love this musical. It's beautiful. It's well made. We talked about how great the movement is. I mean, the costumes are what they are. But the guy playing Earl is the worst, is like the best and worst villain I've seen in quite some time. Like, if I could convince Robert, Clockwork Orange style, to watch a musical, I'd make him watch this one, because Earl is so good and he loves villains. He's a great villain.
Oh yeah, Earl is a fantastic villain.
Yeah,
and Earl is such a fantastic villain because we've all known people like that.
Yeah.
Or we've known people who were in relationships with people like that.
Absolutely. Earl is unfortunately way too common in current day society, to the point he's scarier than any horror monster. I know how big you love you and Mick and Dorian love your horror. Give him a fucking butcher knife. Iconic horror villain. Right up there with Voorhees and Myers. Just absolutely terrifying. He's so evil. He's so bad that when he came out for his bow, everyone forgot he was an actor. Did you happen to catch that?
Yeah.
People were just like, oh, yay, yay. Collective reaction of that audience. I almost hated to be that guy, because he was like Rey Mysterio when he came in at number 30 at the Royal Rumble, and everyone was expecting CM Punk. Poor Rey. You ever see a small luchador cry? I did. But that's why I don't want to hate this, but I hate the message of the musical.
Well, and I feel like the message is less that this is okay, and it's more exemplifying think it's more exemplifying how horrible it actually is to settle for being happy enough. Because Carl in the show, when he's asked why he is cheating on his wife,
he's the one that says "I'm happy enough" line.
Yeah, it's I'm happy enough. I'm happy enough to not want to change anything, but that doesn't actually mean that you're happy. And I feel like the entirety of this thing is more because the only two truly good people in this film, or the only truly good couple in this film, are the autistic motherfuckers.
But they're totes adorbs.
They are absolutely adorable, and you 100% root for them as soon as the guy starts reciting the Declaration of Independence. It's just like, you know what? You two go be kinky for the Revolutionary War. Don't deal with any of the other motherfuckers. But I think a lot of it is it's more of a message about don't settle for happy enough, because happy enough is not happy enough. Happy enough is just a state of misery that you don't want to change.
We don't have the time for me to unpack that the way I want to. Again, we both agreed to not be here for 2 to 3 hours. However, there is something to be said for finding happiness within yourself as opposed to deriving happiness from external sources. I don't want to get into it. I'm making a statement. It's something to explore at another time under different circumstances. I hear what you're saying. I still don't feel like this musical, because it does deal with the happy enough idea, but I think it fumbles it. When the only saving grace of this is that in the end, the doctor did go back to his wife, but at her behest, not because he suddenly realized cheating on my wife doesn't deserve this and cheating on my wife is bad. He goes back to it because he's rejected by Sarah Bareilles' character.
Yeah.
She basically tells him, she finally grows a fucking conscience and goes, your wife doesn't deserve this, go back to her. And he goes, well, what am I supposed to do when the hot woman says go back to my wife? Not go back to my wife?
Yeah.
But so it's not like they have a happy ending together. Her happy ending is the fucking diner and the pies and the daughter.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I don't know if did they ever deal with the cook and the other waitress? I can't tell if they're still together at the end.
I don't know. They didn't, like, they were both back in the kitchen when they were singing to the girl and her husband. But I don't know. They never actually resolved that one.
Yeah, so they may still be together, they may not be. And I guess that's my point that I'm trying to make, is what you're telling me is if you're not happy, if you the opposite of what is it? If you can find love the one you're with. If the love at home is not doing it for you, then find love elsewhere. And it doesn't really matter if you tell your partner about it or not. I think it's bullshit. Quite frankly. Look, I'm not making the argument people should stay in bad relationships. I really am not. However, one must be brave and say the thing out loud that needs to be said for the other person's sake. Because how unfair. I mean, look, I don't like Earl, and I think that's part of this as well as this is okay because Earl's so shitty he deserves to be cheated on. It's a specious argument to say the least.
Oh yeah, and everyone in this fucking musical should have grown a pair. And
okay, so you kind of see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, none of what they did was okay. And I'm not sure if it was really framed as okay. It kind of ended up getting glossed over, and I think they might have ended up cutting some stuff out of here, because I know a lot of musicals are 2 hours, an intermission, and then 2 more hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there might have been more of that storyline that was actually explored in the stage version, as opposed to this cut down for time film version. But it was, none of what they did was right. But I think the underlying commentary on that is that a lot of people will get to a comfortable state of misery and not want to leave, but will get so desperate for that little bit of happiness that they do horrible things to each other.
Okay. And I think from that standpoint, I can accept it. I didn't feel you did a better job of explaining it to me than the musical did, which, puts it back on the musical that it does not. I mean, maybe we're representative of the crowd that watched this. Maybe I'm not representative at all, and I'm an outlier. I don't pretend to always be. Unlike some people, I don't always pretend to be stepping in line with the majority. I understand that sometimes, right past me. But I feel, me being Mark Radulich, the musical doesn't do the world's best job of explaining its point to you. Instead, I feel like it justifies shitty behavior. And it's unfortunate because I actually don't think she's a bad character. I like your line about sometimes you'll do terrible things in order to derive that little bit of happiness that's eluding you. Okay. That's why I don't condemn her. I'm more mad at the doctor, if I have to be honest.
Yeah, the doctor was an absolute fuckhead piece of shit. Like, he had absolutely no reason to do what he did.
I'm certainly sympathetic with the concept of I'm just not into my wife anymore, but maybe you should tell your wife that. And
well, his wife was so sweet.
Yeah. And I'm not sympathetic towards the cook and the waitress either. Like, there may have been an undertowing of, well, they have an arrangement. Okay. I remember Robert and I did a review of Deep Water, I believe it was. And, it talked about Ana de Armas being in a monopoly, half an open relationship with Ben Affleck's character. The stupid premise of that movie is, if you haven't seen it yet, is on the one hand, Ben Affleck has said, "Go so wild oats. I understand you're not happy at home," and then proceeds to then kill the people that she sleeps with. It's a great movie. Really does wonderful things for that particular relationship dynamic. But again, if you have an arrangement, that's fine. But then I think it was the musical was beholden to make that explicit, not halfway wink at you to where you have to insert it yourself if you even come to. Look, there may be people in the audience going, "No, it's perfectly okay to cheat. Who doesn't cheat? Cheating's fun. I like to cheat on my diet. Here's a donut." Like, if you get that kind of mentality for the majority of people, no one listening to this podcast right now knows what the fuck I'm talking about. They're like, get over yourself, John Lithgow from Footloose. All right, then.
And I definitely think that they should have made that explicit. They I think they kind of tried to hint at it, because her husband is basically a vegetable.
Right.
And they stated that his wife is probably lesbian. But
I think I
they
missed that
really
detail
should have
also.
said that we have everything worked out. My husband has signed off on it because he can't even get out of his chair. And she doesn't swing that way.
Okay.
And like,
I then missed details, and it was a little muddled.
Yeah, and they should have definitely not put in that she's probably a lesbian.
Yeah.
Like, they should have just flat out said she doesn't swing that way.
And look, I'm sympathetic to the concept of, I married a man, didn't know I was a lesbian at the time. Turns out I am, and we don't necessarily want to turn over our happy home, but we also don't want to be unhappy either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially in a small town.
Yeah, no. And like I said, I'm not totally like going far right conservative on this. I'm just, again, I go back to either I wasn't paying close enough attention, or or the musical muddled enough of this that I missed a lot of these details. So I'm coming away from this going, is the point of this, it's okay to cheat if you're unhappy? Because if it is, I don't like this musical.
No, I think I think they missed quite a few things, because I'm pretty sure there's 2 or 3 songs that they have on the cast recording
They
that
cut
are
out of
not
this.
on, that aren't in this musical. So there's a chunk of stuff, and I think they just didn't quite
There was an entire number
pull
going,
enough
it's
with
like,
the
no,
plot
we
line.
have an arrangement, we have a dynamic, it's perfectly fine, yada yada, here's the pie. All right.
Either that, or they're just all really shitty people doing shitty things to each other in a shitty small town.
What is the point of Waitress? Life sucks, get a helmet. All right. Thanks. 4 hours for that, huh? Overall, if you're not quite as uptight, or caught up in some of these details as I was, and you like musicals, Waitress is, just from an aesthetic point of view, from a craft point of view, absolutely wonderful. I truly enjoyed Waitress, and if it wasn't for the fact that I struggled with some of the more thematic elements, it would have been the one I liked the most.
Oh yeah, it is an absolutely gorgeous, amazingly crafted show. And when I get to Pittsburgh, I'm definitely going to start taking trips up to New York. But one of the things that I want to do the most is at least a couple of times a year go and see a Broadway show, and this is definitely one of those that I want to go see.
I went to an off-Broadway production of something called Love, Janis, which was about Janis Joplin.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. And we talk about Broadway because it's it's the Super Bowl of stage theatrics, but there's nothing like a good hole in the wall off Broadway theater play. You walk in literally through a hole in the wall. You sit on mismatched seats. There's garbage on the ground, and people walk out and do a very intimate play. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, some of the most fun live theater is those weird tiny theaters that do actually the theater in the round. I love theater in the round.
Yeah. I once saw Andrew Dice Clay perform at the Westbury Music Fair doing theater in the round. Fantastic. Nothing like being told dirty nursery rhymes by a tall Italian in the round. Good stuff. All right. Anything else on Waitress the Musical before we move on?
No, that's all I got for this.
All right then. Legally Blonde. Speaking of movement, Legally Blonde. I did not think I was going to like this as much as I did. So before we get into the Mark reads the wiki, I love the original movie. I'm not as much in love with the second one. The second one suffers from a little bit from more dinosaurs, but the first I have not reviewed Legally Blonde because I was waiting for whatever they greenlit a new Legally Blonde years ago, and it just never came to fruition. But because at the time that I knew about that, I was deep into Synergy. So, we would wait to do Long Road to Ruins when new remakes were coming out or new sequels.
Yeah.
To go along with them. So Legally Blonde has been orbiting my schedule for years now. I fucking love Legally Blonde, and doing You're Cordially Invited with Mick and Mac last week sounded like a fucking tag team. Mick and Mac attack. But one of the things I talked about at the time was how much I liked Reese Witherspoon, and so that alone made me happy enough to watch You're Cordially Invited. Back when Reese Witherspoon and Kirsten Dunst were the 1A and 1B of hot movie chicks back in the I guess late 90s, early 2000s. Reese Witherspoon was fantastic, and I think Legally Blonde, she had been in a bunch of stuff prior to that, but Legally Blonde was, I think, her big coming out party. That was her big starring vehicle. And Reese Witherspoon, I think, hit it out of the fucking park. Legally Blonde, I think, is all the best things about Western comedy. And, it's like half a romantic comedy. At least it's, she's motivated by romance. And it's, the message of it's really, really nice. I think it's a solid screenplay. It's been years since I've seen it, but I remember loving it at the time. The second one, they tried. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but not nearly as good as the first one. So when I saw that there was a Legally Blonde the musical, and then you made the suggestion because it was on MTV, and people had posted it on YouTube. I thought, and this is before I watched. My thought on this was before I had watched Waitress. Was, oh God, they're gonna ruin one of my favorite movies. Like, I'm gonna watch this thing and I'm just like, oh, they're gonna sing and dance up stuff that I don't think needs to be singing. That's why I said what I said at the beginning of this. They're gonna sing and dance up stuff that I don't think needs to be sung and danced up. Boy, was I wrong. Legally Blonde the musical is fucking fantastic. But let's go over to you. Have you seen the Legally Blonde movie, Reese Witherspoon, all these things?
I have not seen the Legally Blonde movie. At the point in time when this came out, I was more into Pokemon cards.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yes, I was very young when this came out.
Yeah.
And these, like, this type of comedy has never really been my thing. I've been a little more into like Monty Python and Mel Brooks, primarily because that's a lot of what my brother watched and a lot of what I was exposed to. So
you're another one that wasn't really brought up on girly stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't really brought up on girly stuff, although it's now become Mick's life's goal to show me all of the girly movies.
I applaud Mick in this. I support her in this endeavor.
Yeah, so
I'm more willing to do more podcasts with you both just to do that.
I am down for that. We can do Shay reacts to watching girl movies.
Fantastic.
But yeah, so Mick's goal is to watch girl movies with me, and Dorian's is to get me caught up on children's films.
That second one I'm not necessarily in favor of. But anyway, so when did you come across Legally Blonde the musical then, if you hadn't seen the original movie?
So I think the first time I had heard about it was through my sphere of Des Moines people. Someone at another theater was doing Legally Blonde the musical while we were doing, I can't remember what one it was.
Okay.
But I didn't get a chance to actually go see Legally Blonde. But I heard about it through my friends that were working on it.
Okay. What did you think of it the first time you? So this iteration, this one that was captured on MTV, had you seen anything? Had you seen any other version of Legally Blonde the musical before the MTV one, or and when was the first time you saw the MTV one that we're going to talk about?
So I actually first saw the MTV one in research for this show.
Okay.
I had seen bits and pieces of the Legally Blonde one through my friends doing shows and stuff, and I sort of count us doing community theater up in Des Moines as having actually seen some professional stuff, just because of the level that we were at. We had massive budgets and tons of volunteers, and like those shows were basically full theatrical productions.
Okay. How do you feel about doing the plot synopsis for the musical? Deer in the headlights. Never mind. I have to pee, and I'm trying to create a situation where you talk for a minute or two. So
I can definitely try.
Okay, no, I'll do it. All right. However, I am going to. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to pull back the curtain a bit. I'm going to do a plot synopsis, and I'm going to be like, Shay, what did you think of the musical? And I'm fucking running to the bathroom.
Okay.
All right, here we go. This largely follows the beats of the actual movie. Elle Woods is a sorority girl. Oh my God. And she is madly in love with a boy. And that boy takes her on a date to tell her, I'm breaking up with you, as all good boys do. And she's just heartbroken, I tell you. But he doesn't break up with her for the reasons you think. She's breaking up with her because, well, we're done with college now, and I have to go to law school and be a serious person who does serious things because I'm from a serious family. And you wear pink, and you are blonde, and you are bubbly, and you are anything but serious. So good luck and God bless. And she was like, well, I'm not going to take that lying down. So she applies to Harvard Law School because that's where he's going. and she pushes herself, and she applies, and she pushes herself, and she applies, and finally she gets into Harvard Law School, which she is going to so that she can prove that she's a serious person and win back the love of her life. Along the way, she meets, I can't remember the character's name, but she meets a character who in the movie is played by, I believe, Owen Wilson. And he is a friend, and he is helping her along. By this point, the boyfriend has paired up with this woman, this very serious woman who in the movie was played by Selma Blair. And she is a serious girl who... she plays the role of, I'll be right back, vamp or something. I got her under the bed.
So yeah. So Elle. Oh Lord, I struggle to remember this plot. So Elle gets into college. Her boyfriend is going out with another girl who is much more serious and very strategic, very politically minded. And Elle, after realizing that the love of her life is never going to want to get back with her, and that he much prefers this political relationship for the sake of his political career, she decides that she is going to complete her law school just as a big fuck you.
Hello there.
Hello.
Okay.
I have been attempting to plot synopsis.
Tag me in, Brett.
So yeah, so she decides that she is going to complete her law degree.
Yes.
And that is the point where we get to the shenaniganery.
Yeah. So you've talked about, I'm sure, that she's in a class with all of our major leads, and that the instructor of the class is still a practicing lawyer, and he gives out internships, and because she's hot and he wants to bang her, she gets one of those internships, and they get a case, and then it's a murder case, and as I recall, she knows she's innocent because of something having to do with a detail about being a sorority girl, and she can't share that particular intimate detail for whatever the reasons are, which I don't remember.
So this I actually do remember because
Okay.
it was just kind of silly. So the reason she knows is because she actually gained the confidence of the defendant.
Right.
Through them being in the same sorority.
Right.
However, she makes a promise to the defendant not to tell that the fitness instructor that she is, her alibi was that she was getting liposuction.
Right. Okay. So they have to prove she is not the murderer without using that bit of information. And she ends up discrediting the pool boy, which is a really funny bit.
It's a fucking hilarious song.
Yeah. The pool boy is like, I'm totally banging her, and I was absolutely, and she absolutely killed the guy. Would I lie to you? And Elle is able to discredit him as having perjured himself, as he is anything but straight. And I remember, like, in the movie, it's just kind of a sight gag. In the musical, it's a full-blown fucking song about just how gay he really is.
Is he gay or European?
Is he gay or European? In any case, so that's great. And I want to say at this point, he hits on her. She rejects him, and he's like, well, look, lady, this, the Me Too movement's not going to be for quite a long time. So if you're not giving up the butt, I'm not going to keep you here. That's just how it goes. And she's like, oh, men. So she ends up representing the defendant herself because she fired the instructor, and she wins the case by discrediting another witness. This is the daughter of the dead millionaire, and as I recall, it's about her perm. She's like, I was in the shower, and she was like, you just got a perm, didn't you? Yes. Well, nobody with the perm goes into the fucking shower. It's insanity. At which point because this only happens in Hollywood movies, at which point she's like, "You're right, I killed him. What the fuck?" So she wins the case, as all good women do, and she ends up getting together with Owen Wilson's character, who's played by somebody else in the musical, and she graduates Harvard Law School, and everyone loves her, and it's just the best. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. I really enjoyed this. I talked about movement before. This has got such. First of all, almost everybody in this is like I talked about, like the similarities between musicals and pro wrestling. Boy, the bodies in this thing, and I don't mean like ooh, they're so hot. I mean like these all look like competitive gymnasts. Like, even the UPS guy who's got the funniest fucking gag in the entire musical. He walks in tight shorts and he's muscular and he's got a large package that he's delivering, and he smiles. It's so nice to see somebody enjoying themselves. And he walks in and he smiles at the crowd and he goes, "I have a package." I fucking laughed my ass off at that.
Oh yeah. And
it's not even just the line, the look he gives the crowd. You know what I'm talking about, a penis. like he's so fucking proud of himself. It's great.
Oh yeah, and it's so hilarious. And UPS guy and Pauline have such amazing chemistry, which they fucking should, because they're married.
Yeah, you beat me to it. That was a detail that was shared by the host of the of that particular recording. Yeah, I was starting to talk about the movement, and everyone's so physical and in such good shape in this thing. Like the women who play like the Greek chorus, one of them in particular has got such like a not skinny necessarily, but definitely like a strong, athletic body.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they're asking them to do, the movement that they're doing on stage, it's pretty intense. Like I said, this is a very frenetic musical. Much more frenetic than I think Waitress.
It is, and to be completely honest, I think the dancing is the best part of this musical. I was honestly not nearly as impressed, at least with this version of it, than I was with the other two that we watched. It just, I have some troubles with the plot, and it's not like the plot as it was. A lot of it has to do with Elle being she has like a master's in fashion
merchandising.
For fashion merchandising, which Elle would not have been a stupid sorority bimbo if she had a master's degree in fashion merchandising, because that degree requires a shit ton of statistics. It requires you to be fantastic at logistics. It requires you to be able to set up
May I cut in?
Yeah.
You and I just traded places from Waitress, by the way.
Yeah.
She never presents stupid. That's the whole point of the movie. It's the whole point of the musical, is because she wears pink, because she is blonde, because she is bubbly, because she is vivacious, because she's in a sorority, the presumption is she's stupid. At no point does she present as stupid. When she says, "I have a master's degree in fashion merchandise," it's because she earned it, because she's smart. She gets into Harvard because she's smart. She's able to succeed at Harvard because she's smart. The whole point of the movie is that they're judging a book by its cover, and they are, underestimating her. And she has to constantly keep proving them right. Keep proving them wrong.
Okay, because it felt really weird that, and I guess it might have been the first couple of songs that maybe made me feel that way.
I can see that.
The first couple of songs, it gave the idea that there was supposed to be some kind of a transformation into this highly intelligent person. And some of it might have also been that she was choosing to not apply herself at the start of the...
I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's it. She's kind of like the Ryan Reynolds of this musical, where no one ever asks him for anything, so he only gives you basic Ryan Reynolds motor mouth shtick.
Yeah. And it was kind of just like, girl, you have a math-based master's. You know better than this.
But, you know, you were a girl once. Maybe you still are. Isn't that kind of a it's like, isn't that kind of like a common thing, though, with girls, is they are taught to not over-apply themselves? That, you know, like, don't be too smart. The boys don't like it. You know, that kind of reinforcement, to where you're not always showing your... Isn't that kind of the last also decade of what's happened in the culture, is a rejection of that sort of thing? It's like, hey, women were always smart and capable, so now we have to be smart and capable in everything and show absolutely no vulnerability, much to the chagrin of everyone who ever consumes media. But that's a whole other beat to death topic. My point being, I think Elle is exactly what the unfortunate thing we do to young girls, is tell them, don't show people you're too capable. You'll never land a man that way, and that is the goal.
And that might be me missing the perspective, just because I grew up a little weird. I think my family just always assumed that I was going to spend my entire life alone with a couple of cats. So they never bothered saying, hey, don't be too smart. You're never going to land a man. Because they were just like, this girl's weird enough. She's never going to land a man anyway.
Yeah, we don't give her the man catching thing. We have to teach her how to take care of herself, because no man's going to. That's basically what you're... Oh, poor thing. Anyway, I believe that is what's happening. Yeesh. That is what's happening in the life of Elle Woods.
Okay. That does make a lot more sense. Although I do have one more tiny gripe.
Yeah.
A half-whip stitch is not a thing.
I don't know what that is.
In the very beginning, when she's talking about the dress that she's going to her engagement for, it says that it's China silk with a half-whip stitch, and everything that was said in that entire 3 minutes of show was wrong.
Okay.
Because China silk is a fairly sturdy fabric that doesn't pucker very easily unless your tension is ridiculously tight. And also, a half whip stitch doesn't exist because a whip stitch is one of the most basic stitches you can do.
This is the most fun time I've ever been splained at. And I get splained a lot because I do podcasts with Robert. But I have to say, you splaining fucking sewing technique to me is fantastic, and made this 90 minutes totally worth it.
Well, I'm glad I made it worth it for you.
Thanks. This has been a treat. I really like... It's funny how Waitress and Legally Blonde hit us differently. This has been an interesting contrast. I was talking before about how the lead in Mean Girls doesn't really win me over. I find myself, for the duration of the vehicle, missing Lindsay Lohan. Here, by the end of it, she won me over. I was not missing Reese Witherspoon. I thought this was a very capable, very talented young lady who I think pulled off something that I don't think Reese Witherspoon could have pulled off. And she is a very talented actress. But this woman is doing stuff with her body that I don't think Reese Witherspoon can do, which is fine. Broadway is not the same as movies. I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
So I think she's actually in many ways an evolution, a step up, if you will, from Reese, which is hard for me to say because I love Reese with all my heart. But the musical numbers in this, they also won me over. I was, is he gay or is he European says hilarious to me. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel after 20 minutes of oh my God and sorority girl squeak. But by the end of it, because that's a long sequence, by the end of it, I was like, all right, I'm in this. I like this. This is fun. And I think by the time Legally Blonde was over, I wasn't missing the movie at all, which is not how I felt about Mean Girls. By the end of Mean Girls, I was missing the movie.
Okay.
So that's why I think Legally Blonde is, other than, as I've said many other times with Jesse and Robert, I love a good courtroom drama. So the fact that there's, because of the setting, because of the plot, there's a lot of legalese in this. There's a lot of, discussion of law, legal interpretation. That is right in my wheelhouse. I should have been a fucking lawyer. The courtroom stuff, as stupid as it was fun to watch. And then, like I said, the leads all have sexy chemistry together. I just think I Legally Blonde came out of fucking left, because I threw it on here because at your suggestion, but I was like, fucking Shay. And then I watched it and I was like, fucking Shay, man. Good job. So I loved it. I'll give you the last word here.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like a different version of it, not the MTV version, I probably would have liked a lot more. This is from a sets and props perspective. It's definitely the weakest of the three.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely not a bad musical. And having never seen the Legally Blonde movies, I think the cast does really fantastic. They've got a lot of chemistry. The dancing is fantastic.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think the gripes that I have with the plot line are just me having not been raised in the same way that most girls were.
Okay, this one does not speak to you the way it speaks to most girls. I get it.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that's going to happen. There is no universal experience. We
No,
all have
and less so every day. Let me tell you.
Yeah. And we all have different childhoods. Our families want different things from us, and they tell us different things about how the world works. And
right.
This one just happened to not hit quite as hard for me as the other two did.
Okay. Well, that is our review of Mean Girls the Musical, Waitress the Musical, and Legally Blonde the Musical. And I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I really appreciate you agreeing to do this, Shay.
Yeah. I love talking musicals with you.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. See? So when are we doing this again? You will be back someday when you're all alone. So the next time we do this will be May 1st. And what a lineup we've got here. We've got the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The one that you go to the midnight movies for and throw toilet paper everywhere like a bunch of heathens.
Yeah.
Little Shop of Horrors, starring Rick Moranis. And this is the one that you threw at me. I think I have the right one here. Jekyll and Hyde the Musical from 2001, featuring David fucking Hasselhoff.
Yes.
Which I have a link. It is currently on YouTube, which is fantastic. So that'll be May 1st. Later in the year, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but in a day where I was bored at work and I was throwing a bunch of shit together and filling out my calendar for the next year, I put on here a triple feature that was focusing on Terry Gilliam, based on a conversation that we had at some previous podcast. So I threw on Time Bandits, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, that sounds fun. I love The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
I think that was that was kind of the anchor for me. Was we had talked about it, I think, briefly, and something that we had did. And I was like, all right, we need to talk the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And then I realized that was Terry Gilliam. And I'm like, oh, that gives me an excuse to do Time Bandits. And I have never seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it's been on the list for a while. So that'll be later in the year. So yeah, May 1st, Little Shop of Horrors, Jekyll and Hyde, and Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then whatever else Shay feels like, she can get to the movie theater.
I think we're also doing a catch up on Spider-Man. Because I was dead sick.
Yeah, you'll be on Alexis's. I don't plug Alexis's shit, but you'll be doing the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man cartoon from Disney Plus, and y'all have fun with that, kids.
Yeah.
All right. In the meantime, in between time, this past Sunday, Jesse and I did a sessions. We finally did our song about the Captain America Shield chain of custody debate from Falcon and Winter Soldier. We finally talked Snow White. I never have to talk about this fucking movie ever again. Thank God. This Sunday, Jesse and I are back. Mick will be on. Robert Cooper will be there. We'll be talking Lacuna Coil, Sleepless Empire on the Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox. Monday, myself and Robert Winfrey will be talking A Working Man, which is based on the novel Levon's Trade by Chuck Dixon, starring Jason Statham. I don't think Alexis has any shows. I will be on Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, talking Death of a Unicorn and Black Bag. That's this Thursday, week from tonight. And then late Friday night, how late? Real late. Myself and Harry Broadhurst, we're the Indie-siders, don't you understand? We'll be talking St. Louis Anarchy, Gateway to Anarchy, 2025. Do you get it? Gateway, St. Louis, do you get it? Nudge, nudge. All right, that's what's going on with me. Shate, show us where you pissed from.
I am Shay Tate from Tate FX. I am a prop master, costume designer, and special effects artist. If you need any parties, cosplays, costumes, actual theatrical productions worked on, go ahead and hit me up at Tate FX and at Tate FX on Facebook.
Shay, absolute pleasure. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You were truly wonderful. Thank you for doing this, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on Triple Feature. Be well, be safe, and behave.